Division is not limited to whole numbers. You can divide decimals with whole numbers too. One big difference in decimal division is that we keep dividing until no remainder is left. This is an important point to remember. There are times when this is not possible, and we will learn about those cases separately. But let's start by looking at an example visually of what it looks like to divide decimals and whole numbers. So I have a problem here, 4.5, so decimal, divided by 3, so our whole number, equals what? So let's look at this in sort of a number line or a length type visual example of taking something that's, say, 4.5 feet long and dividing that into 3 evenly divided sections. And so what I would do in a case like this is if I wanted to divide into 3 even sections, I would make a mark here at the 1.5 foot point, and I would make a cut or a mark here again at the 3 foot point, and I would end up then with 3 evenly divided sections of 1.5 feet each, which would give me the total then of 4.5 feet. And so I could say that the answer to my problem here of 4.5 or 4.5 divided into 3 equally sized sections equals 1.5. And so you can see that I have decimals in this case in both my problem and in my answer. If you already know how to do long division with whole numbers, then you already know most of what you need to know to work on dividing decimals by whole numbers. And now, instead of looking at a visual example, we're now going to look at an example using the long division that you've already begun to learn how to use. So we have our example here that we are going to work on doing long division with decimals. So this is the problem. We have 0.8 gallons of water to be shared between 4 people. How many gallons of water will each person get? And it's going to be shared equally between the 4 people. So what we have as a solution to this problem is going to be the quotient of 0.8 divided by 4 equals what? So the problem we're looking at is 0.8 divided by 4. Let's set this up in our regular long division method. And so my 0.8 is going to go underneath the box, and my 4 is going to go outside of the box. So I have my dividend of 0.8 and the divisor of 4. Now, since there is a decimal in the dividend, there will be a decimal in the quotient. This is the difference from what you have seen when you've done whole number long division. So what we do with a situation like this is right away we take this decimal point, and right where it is in the dividend, we go above to the quotient, and we put also a decimal point right there. I'm going to write this a little bit bigger so you can see really clearly where my decimal points are going. So I have a decimal right here in my dividend, and right above it, I want to make sure that in my quotient, I have a decimal point placed right there. So then from here, we just continue doing our long division as if there were no decimal there. So we can almost ignore the decimal and work from here. So since I have one number in my divisor, I start with the first number of the dividend. And 0 divided by 4 equals 0. And so I place the 0 right here and say 0 times 4 equals 0. And I subtract 0 from 0 and I get 0. And then I just go ahead and bring this next number In this case, it's the 8 that's to the right of the decimal point, but I don't need to worry about that down here. I don't need to bring any decimals down. I simply bring down the 8 that's in the next position, and I put it right here, adding it to the end of my remainder from the previous calculation, which was 0. And so now I have a pretty simple division problem of 8 divided by 4, which equals 2. And I place my answer here in the quotient, and it's a 2 right here to the right of the decimal point. And I perform the calculation, again not worrying about the decimal. I perform the calculation of 2 times 4 equals 8, and I place my answer here and subtract 8 minus 8 equals 0. And so I have no remainder, which means I am finished with the calculations of this problem, and the answer to the question, or the quotient of my long division problem, is 0.2. So each person will receive 0.2 gallons, and I should make sure that I always report my decimals with a 0 before the decimal place. So each person will receive 0.2 gallons of water.